The streets of Manila were alive with noise, jeepneys honking, vendors calling out, and the restless shuffle of people moving quickly through the humid evening air. Yet, amid the chaos, a single voice rose, raw and unpolished, but striking enough to make strangers pause. There stood Miguel, a thin barefoot boy, clutching a weathered guitar that looked far too old and broken to still sing. The strings were mismatched, some fraying at the edges, but in his small hands, it became an instrument of hope. His voice was not just sound, it was a story. Each note carried the weight of nights gone hungry, of sleeping under patched roofs, and of dreams too big for the narrow streets around him. People passed, some dropping a coin or two into the rusted tin can at his feet. Miguel would nod with a shy smile, never stopping, never letting his voice falter. He sang not only to survive but to keep his spirit alive. Every lyric was whispered to the memory of his mother, who once told him, "Your voice is your gift. One day, it will take you beyond these streets." Though the world around him saw just a boy with torn clothes and bare feet, inside Miguel burned a quiet fire. He imagined a stage, bright lights, and an audience that listened, not out of pity, but out of admiration. For now, the cracked sidewalks were his stage, but deep in his heart, Miguel believed that destiny was waiting, just beyond the noise of the city. The day of the audition arrived, and Miguel felt as though his entire world balanced on the worn strap of his old guitar. The studio was massive, its bright lights blinding compared to the dim street corners where he usually sang. As he walked onto the stage, the audience's whispers filled the air. Some noticed his tattered shirt and bare feet, exchanging skeptical glances. He could feel their doubt pressing down on him, heavier than the guitar in his hands. The judges sat at their long table, polished and imposing, each with their own expression, curiosity, hesitation, even quiet disbelief. Miguel's heart pounded so loudly he feared they might hear it. For a moment, he wanted to run, to disappear into the safety of the crowded streets outside. But then he remembered his mother's words, the reason he had come: "Sing, hijo, and let the world see your soul." Taking a shaky breath, Miguel bowed politely. I sing for my mama," he said softly, his voice trembling but clear. The room hushed, and his simple words cut through the tension like a gentle knife. He adjusted his guitar, his small hands steadying themselves against the wooden frame. The audience leaned forward, curious now. The boy who looked too fragile for this moment suddenly seemed to grow taller. He closed his eyes, blocking out the lights and the murmurs, and prepared to let his music speak for him. For Miguel, this was not just an audition. It was the first step toward proving he was more than what the world saw. The first strum of Miguel's guitar rang out across the silent auditorium, fragile yet filled with an undeniable sincerity. His fingers trembled at first, brushing against the worn strings, but the moment his voice followed, everything changed. He began to sing "Hotel California," a song far older than him, yet one he had taught himself on the streets, line by line, until it became his own. At first, the audience seemed surprised. The boy who looked so small and fragile carried a voice that was raw, haunting, and heartbreakingly beautiful. The notes floated upward, wrapping the room in a kind of quiet magic. His voice cracked in places, not from weakness but from emotion, and each imperfection made the performance even more real. It was as though Miguel was pouring his entire life, his hunger, his loneliness, his love for his late mother, into every word. The judges leaned in, their skepticism melting into awe. One covered her mouth, her eyes glistening with tears she could no longer hold back. People in the audience, who just moments ago had doubted him, now sat frozen, some wiping their eyes, others clasping their hands as though in prayer. By the final chorus, Miguel's voice rose strong and unshakable. The song was no longer just music, it was his soul laid bare, a plea and a promise all at once. And when the last note echoed into silence, the room didn't breathe for a heartbeat, as though the world itself had paused to honor the boy who dared to sing his truth. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Miguel stood frozen, clutching his guitar, unsure if he had done enough. Then suddenly, the audience erupted, applause thundered, cheers echoed, and people rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Miguel's eyes widened, his lips trembling as he tried to take in what was happening. One of the judges, a woman with tears streaming down her face, stood up and shook her head in disbelief. "Miguel," she said, her voice breaking, "you reminded us tonight why music matters. It's not about perfection, it's about heart, about truth. And you, young man, have more heart than any voice we've heard in a very long time." The crowd roared again, their cheers growing louder, as Miguel lowered his gaze, overwhelmed. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "For you, Mama." The judge's hand hovered over the golden buzzer, her eyes locked on him with a look of deep admiration. Then, with a firm slam, she pressed it. The buzzer lit up, and golden confetti burst into the air, raining down over Miguel like a dream come to life. Miguel dropped to his knees, clutching his guitar as tears streamed down his face. He lifted his eyes to the shimmering gold falling all around him, as if heaven itself was celebrating this moment. The audience chanted his name, the judges clapped through their tears, and Miguel finally smiled. A smile filled with relief, gratitude, and the first glimpse of a destiny forever changed. Backstage, Miguel was still trembling, his small hands clutching the golden confetti as if afraid it might all vanish. The judges came to him, their polished shoes clicking against the floor, but their faces warm and kind. One knelt down, gently lifting his chin. "Miguel," she said softly, "your voice will take you places you've never even dreamed of. But remember, your gift isn't just your music. It's your heart." Miguel nodded, tears still streaking his cheeks. For the first time, he didn't feel like the poor boy from the streets of Manila. He felt seen, valued, and loved, not for what he lacked, but for what he carried inside. Crew members, contestants, even security guards congratulated him, each one touched by his courage. In that moment, Miguel realized his song had done something far greater than earn applause, it had awakened hope in everyone who heard it. News of his audition spread quickly. Clips of his performance filled the internet, reaching far beyond the stage, across oceans, into homes where people needed to be reminded of resilience, of dreams, of the power of a single voice. Strangers began calling him, the boy who sang his soul. Miguel still carried the same battered guitar, but now, it no longer felt broken, it felt sacred. Every time he sang, he carried not only his mother's memory, but also the love of millions who now believed in him. From the sidewalks of Manila to the world's brightest stage, Miguel's journey became living proof that no dream is ever too small, and no heart ever too poor to shine.